Hey, I'm Daniel Dart, and you are watching The Red Booth.
Hi, welcome to The Red Booth Show. I'm your host, Kimberly Q. On tonight's episode, I have Daniel Dart. You may know him as the lead singer of Time Again, and he has actually gotten into a lot of humanitarian efforts as well. So we talk about all of that on the show. Come and join us. So, hey, Daniel, how are you?
I'm doing well. How are you doing?
I'm good. I'm happy to have you on the show.
I know. It's been a while, right? It's
I
good
know.
to be here.
Yeah, we've been talking about this for a while, and you've been through a lot of adventures lately, and I wanted to have you come on and talk about everything because there's so many good stories to tell.
There has been a lot, actually. I can actually say that. There's been a lot going on.
I know.
So it's pretty exciting.
Well, okay, so just so people can get to know a bit about who you are first to start off with, I think it would be cool to give everybody a bit of your background as a musician, which is kind of where everything started from.
Okay. Well, I started in a band, and I guess you could say I still am in a band. We were called Time Again. We were on Hellcat Records for many years and put out many records, toured the world, had some good success.
They did pretty well, we'll say that, right?
Yeah, we did pretty well.
Yeah,
we did pretty well.
Yeah.
Initially, it kind of happened by accident. It wasn't like some grand scheme. I grew up and I bounced around in placements, and I had these different social workers, and at the time I had gotten arrested again for something that had to do with something petty and stupid. And I had this great judge who I don't know the name of, but he said, hey, can you go to this program instead? And so I went there and met this social worker that was just amazing named Les Lazarus. And he asked me at like 21, hey, what do you want to do with your life? And I had no idea. Because up until then I had just been like, party, I guess. And as arrogant and cocky as I was, I said if I could be anything, I'd be a rock star. And he was like, then you should start a band. And so I started a band. And the name Time Again was a play off that because like my whole entire life has been these expectations and all of that. The Don't Cry For Me on my neck came from like people like having problems getting bounces around as a kid, like it'll be okay, and just kind of like being the one that people pity. And so I was like, Time Again, here we go, like some other time. And then
because you were actually kind of like a foster kid, right?
Yeah, I was like a tumultuous childhood. And so I started a band, and like 6 months later we had a record deal, and we're like,
that's crazy,
on tour. So it kind of was
what? Oh, it's 6 months from 0 to 60 there.
Yeah.
No, okay, so what do you do in the band? Like, how did you get this band started? Do you sing?
I'm the singer.
Okay.
I'm the singer, yeah. Mm-hmm. So initially I just started asking people, and people kind of filled in and rotated. Mm-hmm. And then it kind of just happened, you know? It's like, I don't know. I've proven, I guess, now that I'm older, in retrospect, I've been successful in putting together different projects where I think other people find confusion, but to me it seems a little bit simpler. Like, oh, you want a record deal? Like, you just do this. Which later on in life is probably why I started like a management company. But yeah, so I was just like, hey, it seems simple enough. I'm going to just start a band. I'm going to get a record and to the world. And so
Hellcat Records was the one that first
Hellcat Records, we got signed by Tim Armstrong from Rancid, was the one that kind of
no big deal, just Rancid.
Yeah, and that kind of happened on accident too, because
by the way, kids, go check out Rancid in case you don't know who that is.
You should, yeah. Yeah, and it was that kind of happened on accident too, because we had started playing locally, and I passed out like 20,000 flyers and like all this stuff. And then Tim, who I was buddies with, we had become friends, he was like, you have a band? Like, I didn't know about it. I'm like, you didn't? He's like, my brother told me about it. His brother had, I guess, gotten a hold of our demo and was like, you need to check out this band. And then Tim looked it up, and he's like, oh my God, that's Daniel. I know Daniel. And then we were actually talking about signing with another label at the time, and he was like, you don't want to be on Hellcat Records? And I'm like, I would love to be on Hellcat. He's like, why didn't you ever ask me? And I'm like, I didn't know I should just ask you. And we were actually
you didn't know the protocol.
I didn't know the protocol. So like I didn't know the rules, so I just kind of just was making my own. And it was weird. So it happened on the set actually of a Transplants video, and then he was like, no, you're gonna sign to Hellcat. And then like the next day we got a phone call from a lawyer and was like, yeah, let's let's work it out. And that was like the next 10 years of my life.
Whoa.
Yeah.
And that's what led to you starting going touring all over the world. And
yeah, so we toured all over the world, and it was good, like life and fate had many other things in store that were very difficult and stuff that we can get into more before I kind of started on my new, I guess, trajectory.
Yeah.
But I think even the new trajectory where I'm at now, working on like global humanitarian issues or stuff, started with that platform in music.
Well, for sure. I mean, once you start traveling all over the world, your whole horizon kind of expands.
It changes everything.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like if you don't have a passport, get one. And when you're looking for a vacation, go somewhere without beaches or umbrellas in your drink, and like it'll change everything.
Well, it looks like we ran out of time, but when we come back, I'd like to ask you more about that.
Let's do it.
So cool. And welcome back to the Red Booth Show. We are here with Daniel Dart. So I was just talking with you about what it was like going on tour all over the world. I mean, that's something that most people don't get to experience. Yeah. And I'm sure you had some extremely large audiences. And, what is that like?
It's a lot of fun. It happens really fast. And people would tell me that. Tim, for instance, told me, hey, enjoy this. This is the best time. And it took me a long time to realize that, because you're moving a mile a minute.
Because you're going from like one city to the next city to the next city, like day after day, right? Yeah.
It's nonstop, and you kind of, I guess you could say, you kind of take it for granted. And even now, when people are, I'm like, oh yeah, Germany, and like, I'm like, you've never been to Germany, like you've never been to Prague, and like sometimes you have to catch yourself because you get these experiences that you can easily forget how rare they are, just because it becomes your normal every single day life, and you don't appreciate it as much. At the same time, it was really, really, really difficult too, because you're always on the go, and you're always kind of tired. And then it's hard because you have, I always say it's like Groundhog's Day, because you have the same conversations and the same experience, and like you're playing the same sets, and you begin telling the same jokes on stage. And so I really, really loved it. But I try and keep in context, it is really hard. So if you're ever out at a show and a band guy, you meet him and he maybe is a little snappy or something like that, keep it in context that it definitely is taxing and tiring. And you always have to be on. People always expect you to smile and listen, and
you can't be tired.
Jokes. Yeah, you can't. You're not allowed to have bad days. Yeah. And as humans, we have bad days, all of us. It doesn't matter who you are. But yeah, no, I'm really grateful to have been there. Yeah.
That's amazing. Yeah. What was one of your favorite moments being up on stage? What was?
Man.
Yeah.
I think there's so many, and the being on stage, I think there's so many moments that are great, but a lot of it, I think, that I miss the most when I'm off tour is the conversations we would have on stage, where it's like super random, but like in the middle of a song, you'd see somebody who has like a really cool hoodie sweatshirt on, and you'd run over to your bass and be like, dude, you see that hoodie? And he's like, yeah, that's so rad. And like, everyone's like, what are you guys talking about? And we're like, we're talking about the hoodie that guy's wearing. And I think I miss that, because there's like this intimacy between like brothers, and where you're on the road and you do this, and there's these little moments where they're kind of magical, even though they're super mundane. Mm-hmm. And that's what I miss the most, where it's kind of like you're on stage and it's almost like you're going through the motions, but you're like, man, I'm starving, or like, there's even moments where someone's like, dude, I need to go to the bathroom so bad, can we like cut out a song tonight? And you're like, okay. And that's kind of like the life you live, because now you're living this life where for like a large portion of it, like you are live, and we've had some things go like really bad, and we've had things go really good. Like,
you mean like on stage, like live?
Yeah, we've had like technical difficulties where it's just like power cuts out, and we've had things where you're in like the Czech Republic and you're trying to talk to people, no one speaks English, and like your tour manager's German, and so it's like everybody's like,
oh my god, nobody would understand each other.
Nobody knows, and so everybody's kind of like running around.
So you're trying to like talk to the crowd, and then they don't know what you just said.
You don't know, and it's like a lot of it there, especially when you're in places where they don't speak much English. It's inflection, so you can be like, "How's it going?" and they're gonna like cheer, but you can be like, "I'm so hungry," and they're like, "Yeah," like, because the inflection. And it's probably like the nicest thing to do, but it's like, we were like 23-year-old punk rockers who were like, we're going to start arguments with everybody. And then we proceeded to go do that. But yeah, I think so as far as like specific moments on stage that I miss the moments that other people probably don't find exciting.
That's cool. That's great. I love hearing about that.
Yeah.
Well, okay, so now you were on tour for so long as well with Time and Again, and it's a really well-known band actually. What genre would you call their
punk
music?
rock?
Punk rock.
Yeah.
Punk rock band.
Yeah, I get hit up one day, every single day, at least once a day, when are you gonna do another record? It's like kind of everyone's like, oh, it's like Frank Ocean, what's up with the weight? But yeah, I still, every single day someone brings it up. Hey, when are you going to another record? When are you going to tour? And we will, I'm sure, eventually, just because life is long and we change so much throughout our life and what we want and what's important to us. But for now, I'm happy doing what I'm doing, and it probably won't be anytime soon.
Okay, well,
but it could be.
That's bummer for all your musical fans out there.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I think that it's cool that you've transitioned into kind of what you're doing, which is almost like growing beyond that.
Yeah, I think so, yeah.
Yeah, so I've been seeing you like hanging out at the White House and doing stuff in DC. That was last year.
With Obama.
Right.
With Obama. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then, you're getting into a lot more stuff. We have to take another break.
Let's take a break.
But we'll be right back.
We'll get into it.
That's right. And welcome back to the Red Booth Show. We're here with Daniel Dart. So you're talking about the new chapter that you went into.
I have a new chapter.
That's right.
It's a big chapter.
After a very cool chapter of touring all over the world for like a decade.
Yeah.
And then you started getting into politics.
Yeah. So I got into, I guess you could say, politics or humanitarian stuff, social impact. So I found myself in some legal trouble.
Oh, that's right. We didn't even talk about this yet.
It's kind of a big part. We should talk about it. Should I touch on it real quick?
Sure. Yeah.
So I found myself in some legal trouble in 2011. I got arrested. It was a big deal. Kidnap, carjack, home invasion, all this stuff. My first deal was 180 years.
What?
So I ended up getting sentenced to 7 years.
From 180.
From 180 to 7 years.
Wait, so you kidnapped some people and you...
Well, that's the thing.
Well,
so,
what's the story here?
Do not play with me, right? Like, is what the moral of this is.
Oh my God.
But yeah, so after I filed an appeal and I won my appeal, and after 3 years, 3 days, I went home. So I'm gonna cry, super heavy.
Whoa. That's
so then from
3 years in prison, basically.
Yeah, 3 years. So.
But how did you get in trouble in the first place?
Oh man.
I
mean, it's like I mean, there's so many ways that if you look at what happened, and this is something obviously I've run through my head so much, of how did you get here? How did this happen? Or how did you get put in this position? And I think. At the end of the day, I made some poor decisions, and that had to do with drugs and alcohol, and it's hard. I try not to think about it too much, because it was really hard. And I think it's like especially when you're in prison and you're fighting an appeal, and you're trying to convince people of something. It's so hard because you're just on your own, and it's like you have no access to resources, and it's really weird. I think that's the reason why I haven't done much press since, and you've always been like, hey, come on, and I even had Time Magazine, the New Yorker, actually last week was like, hey, we'd love to talk to you, and I kind of I'm like, okay, and then I never do. I kind of just go about my thing.
But honestly, I think it's really cool that you're sharing that
Yeah.
story, because
Yeah.
there's a lot of people out there that go through some crazy stuff and they don't talk about it, and no one's going to learn from that lesson.
Well, I mean,
you know
now
what I mean?
we have like a big book coming out, so we need to start learning how to talk
Okay.
about it.
Yeah,
you know?
yeah.
But that's how I got into the impact stuff. And initially, I worked at criminal justice, and that led me to connecting with the Obama White House.
Okay.
Um,
So you felt this was an injustice, obviously.
yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I think it was. I think that it was obviously. I felt like it was an injustice to me. The broader injustice, I think, is the stuff that happens to everyone on a daily basis. So,
You mean inmates?
Yeah, inmates, but women, LGBT people, refugees. I mean, immigrants. It's like I may have already said that, but all of these things every day are huge, and I think even the people with the most difficult lives, even in America, have blessed lives compared to Algeria, where I just was, and I think.
Right, because he actually goes and tours right now and helps with.
We're going to talk about it.
Yeah,
we're going to talk about
there's a lot happening.
We're
here.
doing some big stuff.
But why don't we go back to what you were saying?
Yeah.
You went and you met with the Obama administration.
So yeah, through that, I kind of just started getting clicked up. Hey, can you work on this? Can we get your advice on that? And
But how did you start doing that in the first place? Like, how did you go from being an ex-con? I'm sorry to say that.
It's okay.
But you go from being
It's
like,
okay.
I was just in prison and now I'm going to go meet at the White House. How did that even happen?
I was at a nightclub and I ended up getting a conversation with this woman who was studying like criminal justice, and she was like, "Hey, can you come speak at my school at UCLA?" And I'm like, "Yeah, sure." And from there, it was like, "Hey, there's this thing with the mayor. You should speak." And then it was from there that then there was this summit, and I got into a dispute, I guess you could say, with people from the Attorney General's office when Kamala was the AG, and we got this like argument, and like there's these lawyers, and I knew like penal code better than them, and I was like, how we talk to people.
Whoa, because you had to learn
because
that?
of all that stuff, you know,
Wow.
like you learn real fast when like
When you're trying to defend yourself.
when your life is at stake. And so that led to being asked to come speak at a civil rights conference for the AFL-CIO, which is America's biggest union, and then that led to like giving my input on the reentry process for federal prisoners. You know, then that led to building out an immigrant rights campaign for like Santana and Dolores Huerta, and then that led to getting a job with Bezos, the guy he owns Amazon, so we know him, but he has a family foundation. So then I did
Is he
that.
your homie?
I worked with his dad, actually, was the guy who runs the foundation. So I guess
Nice.
if anybody was my homie, it'd be his dad.
Nice.
But Jeff is my homie, a big supporter. Love
We're on Amazon Prime, so
yeah,
hey.
I love it. And then from there, it kind of led to other things until finally.
We have to take a break.
So see you in a minute.
So yeah, come right back and hear some more. And welcome back to the Red Booth Show. I'm here with Daniel Dart.
So we're gonna pick back up.
Yeah.
I'm just gonna go. So, so from that, I had all this luck, and like I had talked about earlier, with putting together these things that kind of make sense. At this time, I met people from the UN and International Monetary Fund and World Bank, and I was just like, yo,
What?
I have these big ideas. Like, I feel like I'm gonna have good luck. What's the biggest issues on the planet?
Yeah.
And one of them that we kept coming back to was the situation in the Western Sahara. When they said this is like one of the largest problems in the world, no one's been able to resolve it. It's been at a standstill. I was like, okay, I'm gonna figure it out. Like that's my goal. About a year ago, I started researching. Hey, how can I make an impact here? If I can get access, hopefully in 10 years I can force a referendum and help get them their independence. So I sent off hundreds of emails, probably thousands of emails, until finally I got a hold of the Sahrawi, which is the Western Sahara people, their ambassador to the United States. Flew out to DC, met with the Algerians, and said, hey, I have this plan. I need visas and like the diplomatic pass and all this. And it was granted. So
Wow.
I just got back. I was just there in the camps, in like the liberated territories, in the landmine fields, dealing with the military, and it was mind-boggling. The head of the UN World Food Program was there with me for a day. It just became kind of this huge thing, and now I go back to DC to keep working on it. So that's kind of where I'm at, and so we get to work on like huge things, and it's like being on stage is great, but working on huge issues and stuff, I think is
I can imagine
it's better. Like
it's
people,
even more,
yeah. It's like people are like, oh, you need to put out a record. I'm like, dude, my life now is pretty is pretty awesome.
Well, you're helping change people's lives like very directly, like actually helping save lives and stuff.
Yeah, it's
doing that.
Yeah, it's so magical, and just kind of learning about this, and then as I've learned about it now, there's been like these really large supporters that have come on board and talking to all these different people, and like, you know, talking to like Snapchat and being like, hey, can we do a series on it? And like all of these things where it's like now I feel like we have the attention kind of people that make really big decisions. And
you were saying a couple, what is it, New York Times, and who else been
it's
trying
like
to reach out to you?
It's I've never like met like where I've like met like these ambassadors and like had like government entities like hit me up like, hey, can you stop by the embassy, can you talk about it? And like having, you know, tea in the middle of the desert with like a president of a nation,
and they probably never sat down with a guy that honestly looks like you. I mean, you have
think there's always
on your neck.
No, there's
know?
like a look
You're
that
like,
happens when I show up at meetings,
and
they're
like, look at this. Like,
there's
they're
definitely
not
that
used to
look.
Yeah.
That and I think that's what's great about it. I mean, the broader goal that I want to push is how we communicate and change things, and how impacted people, I think many times are the ones that have the answers to help other impacted people.
Yeah.
But they're not allowed at the table in the conversation. You know, it's like with LGBT issues, the people dictating LGBT issues are rich old white men. You know what I mean? And that's been the way for women's rights. That's been the way for immigrant rights. It's like, how do we include these people in conversations? And it's great because now as my platform's gotten bigger, I've been able to kind of like throw my weight around a little bit more. Like, yo, like you need to listen, or, you know, we're gonna come at you, which has been, I think, really fun. And now we got a bunch of cool stuff that we're talking about coming up. We're talking about doing a bunch of rad stuff with Planned Parenthood, and a bunch of rad stuff with the chef Tom Colicchio, and anti-hunger stuff, and with the ACLU. And so now it's like,
wow,
we really get to like kind of engage.
It's amazing
across the board. It's so much fun.
Well,
I love it. I'm so blessed.
It's so cool what you're doing. I mean, I wish I had more time. We're actually running out of time.
We're running out of time.
But your story is really fantastic. I mean, you go from like, you know, becoming a rock star to going through some serious personal hardships, you know, having to go to prison. It's crazy. And living through that, getting out, even the way you did. And then becoming kind of a humanitarian. Like it's,
I'm hoping it's just like, I'm hoping this is chapter 2 of a really long book.
Yeah. It sounds like
that's
it.
the goal.
And there will be a book.
There will be a book.
That's right.
And a movie, apparently.
Whoa.
So we'll see what happens.
Well, cool. Well, thanks for everything that you're doing, and thanks for being on the show.
Thank you so much for having me here.
Definitely.
I appreciate it so much. Thank you.
We'll be keeping track of what you're up to.
Please.
Cool. Check out Daniel Dart. You can follow him at...
It's Daniel Dart.
Daniel Dart on all platforms, I guess. Okay, good.
Let's do it.
Okay, awesome.